This evening in our swim session we're going to be focusing upon head position and how to get a better head position, either height, extension or where they're looking. One of the things we're going to play with is the one paddle drill, where you put a paddle on your forehead or top of your head and try and swim. This helps to encourage you to keep your head still and reduces the amount of moving from side to side or up and down, because if the water gets behind the paddle because you've moved your head slightly sideways, the paddle will fall off. So we use this drill to try and encourage a little bit of feedback on how much your head is actually moving. So let's go and have a look and see how it's going on.
So in this example here, we can see head position's really nice and still, paddle's in a good position, and the water pressure is holding it nice and firmly on her head. As we move into this example, so this is an example where the paddle is not quite in the right place. It could do with being just a little bit further up so that it's more across the top of the head and will just give a bit of a firmer contact with the head. In this example, again, another great example of where the paddle needs to be, and you can really see with the breathing stroke there, it's getting pretty close to being able to hold it on in position. And another example where the paddle is just a little bit in the wrong place. So further across the top of his head would mean that the water pressure would hold it in place a lot easier, a lot better, and wouldn't be flapping around as much. There's too much of the paddle out of the water at the moment. And in this final example, so she normally moves her head around an awful lot. This is probably the stillest I've seen her head whilst swimming. And we can see during the full stroke, the paddle's been held in position nicely. There's a bit of pressure on it. Yes, it's a little bit out, but as soon as she goes to breathe, turns her head a little bit and it moves off the midline and the paddle falls off. So let's have another look at this one, and you can see here the head position is actually a little bit high. She's looking too far in front of her. Just pushing her head down a little bit more and looking down, not dropping the head in the water, but just looking down a little bit more will enable when she rotates to actually breathe, that forehead won't move off the line and the paddle will stay in position. Another tip on this is to use fins. So as you can see, just about see in this example here, it helps to keep the momentum and the speed, which will keep the pressure of the paddle in place. But again, a bit like the previous example, head position just needs to look down a little bit more, probably about another 5 or 10 degrees, and that paddle will stay in better position. In this example, she is looking down a little bit more, but could also do with bringing her head position up out of the water slightly, but looking at the same angle, and that will hold the position of the paddle. In this one, then the size of the paddle he's using also doesn't help because the bigger the paddle, the more difficult this drill is, and it would be a lot simpler to be able to use a smaller paddle. But otherwise, the actual position of his head is in a pretty good place. Just needs to realign the paddle. And this example here, again, another one looking just a little bit too far in front. Now, if she looks 5 to 10 degrees further down, that will improve the head position, keep it up and keep it still, and then as she rotates, she'll be able to breathe without losing that paddle. And finally, here we can see an example of somebody doing the drill really well with good head position, good rotation, and maintaining that position on the center line.